I want to talk a little bit today about artificial intelligence and what it means to be human and where maybe Zen and the spiritual path plays into this strange, interesting, possibly beautiful, possibly apocalyptic moment that we're in right now. Oftentimes what happens when I make these videos is that a few events converge in my life to get me thinking about something. And first of all, one thing that happened was, I'm going to put an ad here. This ad showed up in my Instagram feed. What really gets me is that statement, 90% human-like. What's the other 10%? That shirt she's wearing, it's both formal wear and kind of almost some kind of lingerie. She looks like she could be anywhere from an old-looking 15 to 25, 26. It says unlimited audio and video calls. You're going to use this product to satisfy your human needs. And in case you think I am exaggerating, here's Mark Zuckerberg. I gotta let the man speak for himself.
The average American, I think it's fewer than 3 friends. 3 people that they'd consider friends. And the average person has demand for meaningfully more. I think it's like 15 friends or something, right? I guess there's probably some point where you're like, all right, I'm just too busy. I can't deal with more people. But the average person wants more connectivity, connection than they have. So, there's a lot of questions that people ask of stuff like, okay, is this going to replace kind of in-person connections or real-life connections? And my default is that the answer to that is probably no. I think I think that there are all these things that are better about kind of physical connections when you can have them, but the reality is that people just don't have the connection and they feel more alone a lot of the time than they would like. So, there are a handful of companies and stuff who are doing virtual therapist, and there's like virtual girlfriend type stuff, but you're gonna, you'll be able to basically have like an always-on video chat where it's like the AI will be able to, the gestures are important too. Like more than half of communication when you're actually having a conversation is not the words that you speak, it's all the nonverbal stuff.
I don't know, it's a pretty popular sport to slam Mark Zuckerberg, but that final part I thought was interesting. It's the gestures that are important. He says, with a completely flat affect and not a single human-like gesture to be seen upon his person in the last 5 minutes of his sales pitch for the solution to human loneliness being a product that his company is selling. So the world is getting stranger and stranger and more interesting. I think we can all feel this. There's an accumulation of new trends, technologies, movements happening that for like an old school Gen Xer like myself, gives me pause. I mean, I went home. This is the third thing, and then I'll be done. The first thing was the AI friend that I showed you her picture. The second thing is Zuck. Third thing is I went home and I talked to somebody that I know in Wisconsin who works at a Waldorf school. And she was telling me how there is a kid in the school now that identifies as an animal. Okay, so the first step on this journey towards identifying as an animal was having the pronoun they, and then finally the student identifies as an animal. I don't think a specific animal, but I always thought of a wolf for some reason. I don't know why. Probably because they wear a claw. Okay, so there are also other kids with identifications outside of what, for like I said, an old generation X dude are outside the norm. And they sit together at lunch, and the young person who wears a claw wears a claw. So there's a big claw with claws coming off, and they sit there and they scratch the back of the non-gendered students at lunch, right? My point is, I don't think that you can have somebody identifying as an animal like without the internet. Kids nowadays who grow up sucking at the teat of the internet from day one on this planet are okay with taking avatars and energies and ideas and identities from the internet into the real world. So I was listening to my this person talk about the child who identifies as an animal, and I was thinking, like, in the future, what is that person's child going to have to rebel against? Like, will their child be like, I identify as a corpse. I'm going to die now. You can't stop me. It's my right to be dead and identify with the dead. And the wolf animal identifying parent of this child is like, crying tears because their child identifies as a corpse now. I mean, one can joke, one can laugh, but there's a part of me that just thinks the kids are always right. Even though they're so wrong, it's unbelievable, they're always right. If only because they're gonna outlive us. Like, they're just biding their time till we're off the stage, right? Until they're my age. My generation is dead, and now they're the old wise people that are poo-pooing the new crazy thing that the next generations are doing. So in some sense, the kids are always right, because they're going to be the old wise people on this planet someday. And I always get this sense deep down inside that when kids are really crazy, as they always are, as we were, as the ones now are, as the future ones will be, they're maybe in some ways moving with nature. Energies are coming through them from the other side, from places we don't see and don't necessarily know. Young, the future, youth, the future is coming through them. So what kind of a future is this? But all that being said, Buddhism, and Zen especially, does not have an inherently antagonistic relationship with technology. I mean, I think the oldest book in the world is a wooden block with the Diamond Sutra on it. So Buddhism does not have an inherently antagonistic relationship with technology. Of course, why would it? We learned to cook our food, right? And this cooking of the food allowed us to digest way more calories, right? You cook meat, you can digest it. What does that do? Well, this thing, I think, is 20% of our calories go to our brain. You can grow bigger brains if you cook your food, right? This is an argument that has been made for how humans evolved. I mean, technically, if you think about it, we put fire in our heads. We put fire in our brains because some early crazy hominid, when lightning struck a tree, was like, and all the other guys were running the other way. I think I've told you this story before, but I'm telling it again. This is when I sit around thinking about technology, I think about that Promethean ancestor of ours who was like, y'all are running away, but that tree's burning and that's warm. I'm gonna warm my hands. And what if I warm my food? And he cooks his food and he eats his meat and he starts getting smart, right? That mofo put fire in his brain. So human beings are weirdly, profoundly wedded to our technologies. Like, it's hard to separate where the tool ends and the human begins. I mean, the words spilling out of my mouth come from the tool of language. And indeed, upaya, the term for the practices that we do in Zen Buddhism, refers to tools Tools for spiritual transformation and growth. Meditation is a kind of tool. Ain't no getting around having tools. And yet, there's something about the way this is being done now that doesn't seem to support human flourishing, right? And that's why there's this feeling in the air of a combination of despair and hope. We're hopeful that artificial intelligence can do for the human mind what the telescope did for the human eye. I mean, the telescope allows us to see to the farthest reaches of the universe. Or an electron microscope allows us to see like down to the smallest, like the fundaments of matter, right? Like think about what the microscope and the telescope have done for the human eye. I mean, is it possible that when it gets going, artificial intelligence is going to do that for the mind? I mean, that's cause for great hope and great despair. Well, where does the despair come from? I think about it for myself, and I think about the things that are important to me: human relationships, spiritual growth, creativity, productivity of a certain kind. All the things that support human flourishing. And when I see an ad like the one I saw on my Instagram page, or I hear cyborg ZuckerBORG talking about how a human being can have their need for intimacy and companionship and friendship and love met by an algorithm, and I find myself thinking, these are not movements towards human flourishing. These are tautological movements, which is to say you have corporations who are pushing highly sophisticated products onto people in order to addict people to those products so that the corporations can make money, so that the corporations can flourish, and then the corporations dole out prosperity to shareholders, primarily Mark Zuckerberg. So we have a system in which the technology is arising that redirects the flow of human flourishing into profits that the corporation can distribute to whomever it desires to distribute them to. So for me, the moment feels so strange because these potentially totally like species transforming technologies are arising in these really primitive systems of power and profit. So it's not the technologies that are the problem. I think it's the people and the corporations that are developing them and distributing them. They're greedy and stupid. I hate that these guys have the guys, you know, for all our talk about diversity, etc., it's just a handful of really high IQ, low EQ, almost non-existent SQ, or spiritually intelligent people making decisions for billions and billions of people. And I have met wise people. I mean, I was a monk for 13 years. A lot of wise people came through that monastery. And they're gentle, and they're subtle, and they're sophisticated, and they don't make big decisions or run them without lots of forethought and contemplation. They don't run their mouths when they don't necessarily know what they're talking about, and they can see the gears and wheels turning in their own heads, and they watch as their own greed arises and ambition, and they orchestrate their actions in the world accordingly. They don't give in to those impulses. And I think a lot of what I see in like the tech world, the Silicon Valley world, or whatever the hell's going on in China, a lot of what I see is, let's get this stuff going at any and all costs. Like, and we will raise billions of dollars. We will like make sure the government doesn't regulate us. We will use all the media at our disposal to plead our case in the most manipulative manner possible. And we'll continue to addict you people to our products so that we can become the most powerful corporation that produces this technology. And there's a real race right now, worldwide, but mostly between the US and China, to create like the last tool, right? That's what artificial general intelligence is going to be. The moment when an algorithm can do everything that you can do on a computer, but better, right? That's artificial general intelligence is basically that moment. And everybody, all these companies from Meta to OpenAI to the ones that are working in China, they're all racing to make a artificially intelligent entity that can outthink the rest of the planet. I find that it's important for me, instead of listening to the hype or being infected by the negativity or the apocalyptic doom speak around technology, I find it interesting to take quiet moments by myself away from my technological devices, beeping and chirping for my attention, and envision what kind of a society or world we could have with technology. Simply to hold that little flickering candle of vision inside me to light up the darkness around the future. I think it's important to have some vision about how things could be. And vision about how things could be comes from, and I think, principles and an understanding about how things are. And that's what a spiritual practice gives you. That's what a wisdom gives you, right? Like my teacher used to manifest wisdom with me when we would go into our private meetings together. And he would, you know where I'm going with this, reach out and shake my hand. He would touch my hand. Something I needed to learn through my spiritual practice was human touch. I was in my head. I was in my head, yeah? I was there, here. I thought that problems were best solved by thinking and overthinking, and then thinking so much your mood collapsed under the weight of all your perseveration. And then you crawled up from the crashed mountain of your own ideas and started thinking again. One thing my teacher said is no, connection is important. Look in somebody's eyes, feel their hand against yours, feel their warmth. Get out of yourself and into relationship with your surroundings. So this is a principle. It's a deep and true principle. It's a principle that supports human flourishing because it's based on reality and truth. The principles that support corporations are not necessarily based on truth. They're based on productivity and they're based on self-perpetuation. So a corporation's principles are based on growing that corporation at all costs. So these are people making tools, and the tools are amazing, and they're so amazing that they spellbind us. But the tools can be used for human flourishing. And I think they're going to have to be used for human flourishing, or they're going to destroy us. It is a time for wisdom. It's a time for compassion instead of greed. Wisdom instead of addiction and ignorance and wearing blinders. For ethics instead of rank, raw selfishness and self-interest. So do you see, like, I love this life. I mean, we're creating a situation where true human values, the stuff of Jesus, the stuff of Buddha, the stuff of Mohammed, the stuff of Shakespeare, the stuff of Mother Teresa, the stuff of good people. We're creating a world where it's necessary that we all embody those values instead of the values of corporate entities, which are self-interest, growth at any and all costs, and profits for me and ours, and the devil take the hindmost. We're being forced to be good and true, in my opinion. And for some weird reason, I'm optimistic. It's not going to be easy. It's the work of a lifetime for all of us, I think, to try and become wise. I think that's the whole reason we're here. Wisdom. That's it. Don't lose track of that. In all the hype and all the doom scrolling and all the glittering promises that Silicon Valley is offering, don't lose sight of the one key component in human flourishing, which in my experience from working with my teacher and other wise Zen Buddhist people I've known, which is wisdom. Okay, if you'd like to support me doing a video on wisdom in the future, you can go here to patreon.com/showsonjackhobbner. That's patreon.com/showsonjackhobbner. Wow! People support this channel there. The tool of the internet is allowing me to speak to you. It's cool. It's cool. It's good. It's good. And I have, maybe this is why I have faith and hope in the future, is that in my own personal life, I've had the opportunity to use technology to take the tiny little gems I got at the monastery and share them as best I can. I mean, what more could somebody like me ask for? Nothing. Patreon.com/showsonjackhobbner. You can also go into the comments, the description of this video, and there's a link to PayPal, and you can support this channel there. Or you can hit like, you can hit subscribe, you can hit notifications, because that'll, the little algorithm bloodhounds are out there, and they sniff out likes and subscribes, and then they push this channel and helps it flourish. Otherwise, friends, I'll see you next time. Oh.